Most of the more unhinged guests on Dr. Phil are presumed to be mentally ill, though they often lack a clear diagnosis to explain their strange behavior. That's true of Sexy Vegan, and yes, that is his legal name, though I refuse to refer to him as Sexy, lest anyone think that's my personal opinion on the matter, so in an act of civil disobedience, I'll be referring to him as Hans, which is the name he was given at birth. Hopefully, he can find it in his heart to forgive me. Hans appeared on Dr. Phil in 2017. Well, it was more like his mother Susan appeared on the show on his behalf. Susan's husband was wealthy, and she received an $11 million inheritance after his passing. The problem is, she was regularly spending hundreds of thousands of that inheritance on Hans. Even though he was in his mid-30s, he refused to work to earn a living, since he considered himself above a normal job. He was, quote, too talented and beautiful for a 9-to-5. At the same time, he insisted on residing in Hollywood, so those exorbitant living expenses were falling on her to cover. Susan certainly wasn't helping the situation, though. She also bought him multiple cars and condos just because he requested it. She clearly didn't know how to set up boundaries between her life and that of her son. However, the situation was far more bizarre than simply some lazy bum of a guy mooching off his rich mother. Hans's mother was actually subsidizing him being a nuisance to society. Tens of thousands of dollars had gone to paying bond and legal fees for Hans's favorite pastime, getting arrested. She had bailed him out of jail multiple times across 15 different arrests for offenses such as possessing ecstasy, making threats, breaking into a dog pound, and whipping it out to urinate in front of a crowd of people. Sounds like a normal day in Hollywood. However, in Hans's opinion, his arrests for those incidents were undeserved, and that's partially why he thought his mother was obliged to pay his bail. The authorities were targeting him for no reason, and the onus was on her to liberate him from his unjust oppression. Other than being arrested, his hobbies include prancing around Hollywood half naked and scribbling chicken scratch all over the walls of the condos his mom bought for him. He holds a grandiose image of himself as some kind of messiah or exceptional person, which is the main reason he's propelled to do these things. For example, a point he harps on is having received the highest score in Hot or Not history when he was 26, as if it were some kind of official achievement. Whether this is true or not, he also owns tons of mirrors and brings them around with him everywhere so he can check himself out. He's made sporadic attempts at earning an honest living, such as trying to launch a dating website, which his mom spent 100 grand on advertising for. He's also written 2 novels. One, called The Adventures of Fargo Lefty, features a character who is basically a self-insert of Sexy Vegan. The concerning part is that this character buys a gun and starts unaliving people who mistreat animals. The second book, After Death, details the story of Dante Bish, an inventor who improves upon the design of toilets and becomes wealthy after the masses adopt his new innovative model. Using his riches, Bish contributes to environmental causes and promotes veganism. By the way, Bish is also a fallen angel who was sent to Earth by God due to his failure to adhere to a vegan diet. So he does this all to make amends for his grave sin of not being an epic vegan. That brings me to the obvious points, that a big part of Sexy Vegan's shtick is veganism. I mean, it's written on the guy's face. I don't know why it is that, while not all vegans are insane, the most insane people are often vegan. It's nothing short of intriguing to observe how he adamantly upholds this specific principle while displaying erratic behavior on all other fronts, to the point where he starved himself in jail when there's no vegan food available. Though if he is indeed mentally ill, this kind of cognitive dissonance is par for the course. On that point, Vegan's own appearance on Dr. Phil was quite brief, because as soon as they brought him on, he started moonwalking and yelling obscenities.
I am the beautiful vegan messiah. I was just like my dad, okay? 10 luxury cars. My dad told me I had the same name as him until I legally changed it. My mom did not bail me out of jail when she knew I was innocent. I'm liberating over 70 billion pigs in cages so small they cannot move for years. My mom's a sociopathic piece of I have the highest score in Hot or Not history. I got 9.9 out of 10 after 327 women rated me. Let's see your talent. Let's see your talent, you ugly piece of
Okay, stop.
He ended up coming back on the show roughly 3 months later, and the discussion was a little bit more productive that time, mostly owed to the fact that Hans had been working with a psychiatrist Dr. Phil provided. During those months, Mr. Vegan had managed to stay out of trouble with the law, and things were looking up. His mother also acknowledged that she had been financially incentivizing these endeavors, thereby enabling them, and she seemed to have agreed to stop. However, the psychiatrist didn't have anything to mention regarding what mental illness could possibly be afflicting Hans, except for anxiety. Hans doesn't have schizophrenia, schizophrenia or bipolar disorder or anything you might have expected. Dr. Phil thought he could be suffering from a personality disorder, what with all the delusions of grandeur and antisocial behaviors, but that's it. I honestly have a hard time believing that what you see is how this guy naturally is, and maybe it's the case that the psychiatrist was unable to be thorough, or Sexy Vegan suffered some kind of brain damage from his prior drug abuse. In any case, Hans didn't continue to improve after his last appearance on Dr. Phil. In fact, it seems he's exclusively gotten worse since then. It's unclear if his mom is still bankrolling his reign of terror, but I mean, someone is if he's still got a pulse, because I can assure you that anybody with the name Sexy Vegan is definitely not employed. Even if Hans wants it to work, which he evidently doesn't, there's no way he could hold down a job. Unfortunately, there have been plenty of new developments in his story. In 2019, he was arrested for having his pit bull lick his butt, filming it, and then posting the video online. So much for putting a stop to animal cruelty. He pled no contest to the charges, was put on probation, and was given community service. His dogs were also thankfully taken out of his possession. His side of the story is that it's a double standard that people can keep animals in cages, but he isn't allowed to, you know, do what he did.
I'm innocent of all the charges. I would never abuse an animal. Society is so screwed up. It's okay to keep animals in cages so small they cannot move for 2.5 years. Right. Yeah, a dog licking my butt on Twitter, that's the end of the world. When
Even in light of this bad publicity, he ran for president in the 2020 election. This endeavor was accompanied by some public speeches in his usual manner of stopping his car in the middle of busy traffic and then jumping on top of it. Yes, that's something he regularly does. In this video, he gives a very moving speech about his campaign promises, such as changing the national flag and building more public restrooms, and strangely enough, he claims to be endorsed by NPR. He reiterates his usual God complex spiel that, quote, "You are looking at the greatest living being that has ever lived." How eloquent. Then a cop car shows up and he hops back in his absolutely busted whip and speeds off. It's actually quite an impressive maneuver, but I guess he's used to doing this by now. Unfortunately, not all of his speeches have been as polite and inspirational as that one. During 2020, he would ironically be arrested yet again for mistreating animals. His pet rabbit had suffered severe injuries that were allegedly inflicted by him. His bail was set at $20,000, but he's clearly out on the streets again being a menace to society, so someone had to have bailed him out. What happened with these charges is currently unknown. Sexy Vegan is currently running for president again in the 2024 election and has an impressive social media presence to go along with his campaign. In fact, the Sexy Vegan Instagram account is currently sitting at a whopping 1.6 million followers. It's unclear if those followers are botted or what, but it's a sight to behold nonetheless. In any case, his post consists of pictures of him wearing women's clothes and screenshots of profound Mark Twain quotes. His Instagram bio reads, "Please leave caps off and don't use dog poo bags so you don't trap insects. Flush the poo down the toilet instead. No stink in trash." This is actually quite an important point to him. He's drawn diagrams about this issue, and we see it pop up again on this website for his presidential run. On that website, there's a paragraph written about, among many other things, the importance of leaving the caps off plastic bottles and not using doggy bags so insects don't get trapped in them and die. His obsession with veganism apparently extends to a preoccupation with the suffering of insects as well, if that's even a thing. The universal law of karma dictates that you reap what you sow, not necessarily in real time or even in this particular known existence. Oprah has contended, and she was the person who established the career of Dr. Phil, and she met Dr. Phil when the meat industry was suing her for defamation, and Dr. Phil posted me to his social media in 2018 on Oprah's birthday, and Oprah told Dr. Oz, who resembles me, that she didn't believe in coincidences because there are too many. Please do not use dog poo bags because they are mutually disadvantageous because they trap insects and cause unpleasant odor in both the transient receptacle as well as on their way to pollute landfills. Please flush down the toilet or use fertilizer on the soil. Please do not use single-use intended plastic bottles, but if you do, then leave caps off because insects go in because they are thirsty, and when you put the caps back on, then throw it away, the insect is trapped in there and suffers until they slowly die. There is a better way if you listen to me. I notice things that pass others by. True empathy is not telling others what they want to hear because you know it will go over well. True empathy is ending suffering even if people who lack the empathy to understand what you were doing not only don't give you the credit for your noble work, but insult and call you crazy. I currently live in an electric house and own an electric car. I do not drink, smoke, or use any illicit drugs, and I recycle everything. His other policy positions include legalizing prostitution, drugs, and public nudity, making animal testing illegal, and banning Wikipedia. Dog waste shall also be flushed down the toilet as a matter of vegan law. Among other things, his site also has a page for pictures of him and his butt. In fact, he has a strange but consistent fascination with his own. He's put out multiple albums where the cover art is just a picture of his, quote, Heavenly Cheeks. By the way, the track names on these albums are truly something else. For example, every now and then, I wear panties. His obsession extends to the unhinged videos on his YouTube channel, like this one describing how, after going to the bathroom, he washed his behind 100 times by splashing toilet water on it with his hand, which might tie back into the futuristic toilet technology in his previously mentioned novel. Perhaps backside hygiene is another hot button issue for him. Will we receive a rousing speech on the matter one day? Who knows? This is unrelated, but here I was thinking I knew something about making good videos, and Sexy Vegan crushes my self-esteem.
This is Sexy Vegan, so I got so fucking angry earlier because I was in front of Hyde for a little bit, but it wasn't really going. So I went with this mirror with, you know, some stuff on it. My chair, I took an Uber out, right? Okay, so I'm hanging out in front of Hyde, and
I thought the hooks on my videos were compelling, but zam! That cold open on his long, slender legs just blows everything I've done out of the water. I've never been so immediately engaged in a video in my entire life. Now, jokes aside, since Hans' own agency is up for debate and all this, the responsibility falls on those around him, like his mother, to get help. At this point, he's 40 years old, so any improvement in his life will never start magically coming about on its own. Whether his family already tried and failed to help him, or his mother decided to continue her habit of financing him is currently unknown. Let's just hope that, at the very least, he doesn't commit any more offenses against animals. Out of anyone, you'd think the last person I'd have to say that about is a guy named Sexy Vegan, but here we are. Faking cancer is probably one of the most frowned upon things you can do that's still technically legal, right up there with being a furry. And even though it's such an egregious offense, it seems to be the go-to move for attention seekers and sympathy cravers nationwide, as well as the plot of It's Always Sunny episodes. It's surprising that they always opt for cancer, considering the kind of proof that's necessary to verify that claim, though pathological liars tend to not be the most forward-thinking people out there. A woman named Jessica went on Dr. Phil in 2015 to talk about her mother, Patricia, who was telling people she had stage 3 brain cancer, and she wasn't just making this claim to those around her. She'd even talked about her supposedly impending doom to the local news.
My mother did a local news story telling everyone that she had stage 3 cancer, that she was going to die.
Except, according to her daughter, Patricia was lying. She allegedly had a history of faking medical conditions ever since Jessica was little. After she and her siblings had gone to counselors at school about some kind of situation at home, CPS got involved. Patricia supposedly was aggravated by her and her siblings snitching, as it were, and put them in foster care. However, it seems she regretted this because during supervised visits, she pretended to have a limp from suffering a minor stroke to garner sympathy from her children. But she screwed up by mixing up which side the limp was supposed to be on. Among her claims now were that she had 17 strokes, had undergone chemo and brain surgery for the cancer, which included having her face, jaw, and ear surgically removed and replaced, that plates were put in her head, that she flatlined twice, and that she had collapsed lungs at one point.
When I first woke up from surgery, I had no memory. I was very scared when I found out I may not have much time. They said I wasn't going to walk again, I wasn't going to talk again. I had to learn everything over again.
She also made the astounding claim that she had lost 100 pounds while being in the hospital for a week, which is just, wow. That sounds like a killer clickbait ad for a sketchy website. This ugly son of a bitch lost 100 pounds in 6 days, and basically, you're f***ing stupid. She added to her status of an absolute specimen and freak of nature by claiming to be a world champion weightlifter with 12 world records, in spite of having strokes around the clock, or whatever else. Derek from More Place, More Dates needs to get in touch with this lady so he can make a video called "Not Having Brain Cancer is Killing Your Gains." Now, she did indeed have a couple of medals from lifting meets in the States, but yeah, nothing suggests that she's a world champion. However, that didn't stop her from touting the claim to attract even more attention and praise.
Altogether, I have 12 records. People are so shocked when they come up and say to me, "You have been through brain surgery, you've been through chemo, and you're lifting all this weight?" Every time I go to my doctor's appointment, they say, "We don't know why you're still here. You are a living dead girl."
In her desperation, Jessica went to Dr. Phil so that Patricia could be confronted with her lies.
I cannot let my mom lie like this. I've told her to stop, I've confronted her with doctors, and I can't do it anymore. So I decided to write the Dr. Phil show because my mom wants attention, she wants a show, then let's give her a show.
Dr. Phil revealed to Patricia what she already knew, that there was nothing in her medical records to substantiate any of her myriad of claims, save for the fact that she did indeed have brain surgery, but it wasn't for brain cancer. He also brought up another issue at hand, the fact that, according to Jessica, Patricia's home was filthy. Jessica was worried about her brother's health and safety, as well as those of the pets residing in the house. Dr. Phil sent a specialist that confirmed it was a hazardous environment to live in by analyzing air and surface samples taken from the home. As for the motive behind all of these shenanigans, her daughter thought Patricia could be doing this to collect donations. And of course, the extreme nature of her claims naturally attract attention, sympathy, and praise. As for what happened to her ever since, it actually isn't clear. But maybe she's contracted a terminal case of foot fungus or something, so keep her in your prayers, guys. You've probably seen stories in the news about female teachers getting caught sleeping with their male students before. Arguably, the strangest part of the phenomenon is how it's consistently treated like a casual occurrence, or even something to be celebrated for the underage victim, no matter how young they are. It's quite a disturbing topic, and luckily we won't technically be talking about a case of an adult taking advantage of someone who is under the age of consent today. However, this is a case of an educator abusing their position and subsequently getting arrested and criminally charged for it. Not only that, the incident was filmed and spread around the school. Meanwhile, the teacher tried to sue the victim's mother. In 2014, 29-year-old Tanya Ramirez got involved with a 17-year-old student named Tristan. He was not in her class, but he did indeed attend the school she worked at. To clarify, the age of consent in Texas is 17. However, it's still illegal for students and teachers to get together for obvious reasons. However, as it turns out, it wasn't immediately apparent to Tanya why such an engagement would be wrong. Tanya initially claimed Tristan was the one to pursue her, but Tristan revealed that, through a mutual friend, Tanya had informed him that she thought he was cute and that he should get her number, and that's how they first got in touch over text. That same friend allegedly also got with Miss Ramirez, though she denied this. They would end up talking for 4 weeks, exchanging over 300 texts, until, as Tanya puts it, things got more flirtatious. Some of their text exchanges were shared on the show. Tanya: maxed out on squat and sumo deadlift today. I'm sore already. I need a massage bad. Tristan: well, I'm good at massages, so... OMG, I'm so down. Me too. Yay, I can't wait. Tanya: you don't text me back. When you see me, you don't say anything, so what's up? Tristan: haha, same with you, and okay, promise I'll talk to you next time. That's on you. I'm not forcing you to do or say anything. You just gotta let me know what you want. I'm going out of my way to text you first or go out of my way to see you, but I won't if that's not what you want. I will. You will what? That didn't answer my text. I do want this is what I'm saying. Well, I'm beyond glad to hear that. Tanya: I haven't asked you, but how old are you? 17, haha. Haha, when's your B-day? March 24th. Oh, ugh. That's a long time before you're 18. Yeah, I know. I couldn't even talk to you after school without someone coming up to us. Felt like we were being watched. Haha. Haha, I know. OMG. Do you have a girlfriend? Gotta ask that, cause I got played big time by you-know-who. Lol. Lol, no I don't. She explained that this last exchange had to do with another student. Tanya would end up inviting Tristan over to her house one night at 2 a.m., and you can imagine how that played out. She weirdly smirks as she talks to Dr. Phil about how they immediately went to the bedroom when Tristan arrived, which she claims was her idea. The complicating factor was that he recorded a short 10-second video of their encounter on his phone, which he did because his friend wanted proof. But in his drunken stupor, he claims he accidentally sent the clip in a group chat of a bunch of his friends. Imagine being in that group chat. Actually, on second thought, that video probably wasn't that much more confounding and unexplainable than the things you MFers send in your group chats. But that's for the next video. Meanwhile, Tanya felt that the video being leaked wasn't accidental and that she had been set up by Tristan, whose intent from the beginning was to publicize himself getting with a teacher.
You think it was like a trophy thing?
Correct. Like he wanted some kind of recognition after, sleeping with a teacher.
She was also mad that he basically hit it and quit it and didn't communicate with her after the fact.
The next day, just one text in the morning and that was it.
What was that text?
He texted me that he had a great night, or it was great, or something in that matter. And then I text back that yes, it was, that, maybe we could do it again.
Obviously, their relationship was exposed once a concerned parent found the video and brought it to the attention of the principal. As for Tanya, she found out about the video for the first time when her mother's co-worker's niece showed it to them, so she had to watch this thing with her mother. Yikes! And I thought a teacher having OnlyFans was embarrassing. Concerningly enough, Tanya said she did Tristan a favor by making him more popular around school, and claimed this event led to him being named Homecoming King. Getting in trouble with the law was apparently quite the shock to Tanya, who thought that something like this was only grounds to be fired from her job, but not a criminal offense.
You say you didn't know it was wrong.
Well, I'm saying I didn't think it was legally wrong. I know, obviously, with my profession, I crossed a boundary with the contract that I signed. but legally I didn't think I would be classified as a felon being charged with having sex with a consenting adult.
She pled guilty to the charge regarding Tristan and pled no contest to another charge of doing similar with another student, though on the show she denied her guilt for that charge, only accepting it for the sake of a plea deal. Tanya defended her actions to Dr. Phil by claiming that Tristan should be considered an adult and that he knew what he was doing, and that she was the real victim here because he recorded her without her knowledge. Her story doesn't bode well when you consider she initiated all their interactions, and the video wouldn't have been recorded if she didn't do this in the first place. Obviously, this became a big case in the local media at the time, which resulted in Tristan's mom calling Tanya a sexual predator in the news, which Tanya found to be inaccurate slander. As a result of this, she sued Tristan's mom for defamation, once again turning the tables on her victim. They clearly had animosity towards one another on the show, as when Tanya said the video went viral, Tristan's mom remarked that it wasn't that widespread because, quote, it wasn't that good.
The video went viral, so
It didn't go viral. It wasn't that good. It was only 10 seconds, baby. It was only 10 seconds. And I don't even really feel like I have to.
This woman's got some crazy one-liners.
And your client was doing a booty call at 2 o'clock in the morning, having sex with my son.
What a demented situation. In accord with how these cases are usually treated, Dr. Phil was also cracking jokes and the audience was laughing during the whole show.
You said he had the phone in his pocket?
or on the pocket, on somewhere where he was in his grasp to reach.
Because he didn't have any pockets at the time, did he? I mean, you made a big point that he was not in your class. You weren't teaching him.
Right, he was never my student.
Right.
He was just enrolled in the same school.
Yeah, but he wasn't your student.
No.
Well, until that night. But is it Mrs. Ramirez, or how do you refer to her?
Tanya, Miss Ramirez.
How'd you refer to her that night?
I get it, but at the same time, I'm not sure if they'd be finding this so funny if it was a 31-year-old man and a 17-year-old girl. Nothing quite got resolved on the show, which is basically the norm for Dr. Phil, but hey, at least it's good content! There haven't been many updates on Tanya Ramirez ever since, besides the fact she started another lawsuit. This suit disputed the Penal Code of Texas, challenging the law which indicted Tanya in the first place. She was actually trying to overturn the law which forbids inappropriate interaction between students and teachers. What a mad lad. Or a mad ladette, I suppose. She just couldn't take her L in peace. She had to go and try and screw up the law to make it easier for other teens to be victimized by creepy teachers. The case's argument was that the law infringes upon the constitutional right to have consensual intercourse. I get what she and her lawyers mean, but like, that sounds incredibly funny. Ah yes, who could forget the 69th Amendment of the Bill of Rights, Thomas Jefferson's most profound piece of legal writing, which protects everyone's fundamental right to woohoo in The Sims 4. This whole case was literally Tanya accusing the legal system of you-know-what blocking her. Obviously, she was not successful in her crusade, and the state of Texas didn't see it her way. But that wouldn't stop her from attempting to take it to the Supreme Court in 2018, which clearly was unsuccessful. That probably would have been the most entertaining case to ever grace its halls, but alas, we live in the boring timeline, so we don't get to see Tanya Ramirez take the stand and give verbose arguments in defense of her poor impulse control around 17-year-olds. Do you want to live for 400 years? How about regrowing your limbs and organs? Would you like to know the secret to curing autism, AIDS, Down syndrome, and diabetes? All of which I can tell based on your appearance you may be suffering from. Are you sure you want to know? Can you handle the consequences of possessing such an elixir of life? Can you even handle the healing process? You'll be having strokes, aneurysms, and explosive diarrhea around the clock. Are you sure you're ready? You are? Really? Okay, well, there's a middle-aged Vietnamese lady out there giving the recipe for free on Facebook. Yes, I'm serious. Jillian May Tai Epperly is the creator of the illustrious Jilly Juice, a miraculous cure-all concoction that does all of the above and more, composed merely of 2 cups of water, 2 cups of cabbage, and 1 tablespoon of salt. For reference, 4 tablespoons of salt in one sitting is a lethal dose. All of this is blended and fermented, obviously, just like Mima used to make, and you're supposed to drink a gallon of it a day. That's 6.4 tablespoons of salt a day. She doesn't hide the fact that this will be a traumatizing experience for any prospective undertakers of the Jilly protocol.
You acknowledge that they're going to feel really not great when they start drinking this.
We're redefining the role of pain in our world.
Okay,
right?
You're saying they're not going to feel well when they drink this at first.
They're going to feel healing.
Your grandma's back pain? Let me push her down the stairs. She'll definitely be feeling the healing after that. Oh, and I forgot to mention, the juice has a special bonus effect if you're lucky.
You could potentially reverse homosexuality.
Oh, me? I'm not doing anything. Totally not ordering enough cabbage and salt to brew 100 gallons of this stuff as soon as possible. If it wasn't already obvious, jelly juice is a classic snake oil scheme. It garnered a fair amount of attention online in 2017, to the point where Jillian had a Facebook group with 58,000 members, and also got a warning from the FTC for false advertising. She was even instructing people to give her juice to babies, which is just so incredibly dangerous if you know literally anything about infants. They can't even drink water or cow's milk, let alone this absolute aberration of a beverage. Naturally, Jillian was the subject of plenty of bad press, and the vast majority of people rightfully thought she was a con artist, but a small cohort were desperately following her advice, which is what led to her appearance on the Dr. Phil show. She was there to discuss not only her abomination of a creation, but the other schizo health claims she was pushing online, and to confront the poor souls who were unfortunate enough to follow her advice and suffer the horrendous consequences. This included 2 women who went on the show to talk about the awful side effects they suffered as they increased their jelly juice intake. Honestly, they should have known better than to fret. The symptoms aren't a bug, they're a feature.
Because this is gonna purge out everything. When you're detoxing and doing my protocol, you're gonna be expelling all those parasites, and it's not gonna be pretty.
These poor women explained how, along with supernatural amounts of diarrhea, they both suffered strokes. Or sorry, not diarrhea, waterfalls.
It's not diarrhea.
It's violent
not diarrhea. It's called waterfalls because it's different context, different intention, and different outcome.
Okay, explosive diarrhea.
One of them actually had 2 strokes, leading up to which she was already having concerning symptoms. But when she contacted Jilly and her moderators about it at the time, they only egged her on to keep going.
By this time, I'd talked to one of her moderators. The moderator said, well, if it's not, why don't you back off on the juice and see what happens? If it goes away, it's just a healing symptom. Well, it didn't go away. It got worse. MRIs proved that I had had 2 strokes. And she was very rude to me. How do you know you had strokes? She says to me. Well, my doctors told me I had strokes. And you believed them? She said to me.
The other woman had a blood pressure reading of 205/185 at her worst point, which is simply harrowing. She was slurring her words extremely badly and her face was drooping. She knew she was right on the verge of a stroke. Maybe the worst part of all of this is that, faced with the horrific consequences of her health recommendations, and even with these 2 women crying in front of her, Jillian didn't even flinch. Nothing can deter her from her delusions whatsoever or cause her to even have a shred of guilt. She just blamed her own victims for not being dedicated enough to her advice.
So basically, all those symptoms reinforced your belief system that you're basically going to die from my protocol. So you basically just were like, you really didn't understand my protocol. If you did,
Why
you
is it
wouldn't.
all about you?
How dare you?
Because it is a protocol that you guys came to me.
Jillian claimed it would have been worse had they not been drinking her fermented vegetable solution, as if these strokes occurred by themselves and the jelly juice actually prevented it from being worse. She would also post on social media about these 2 women, calling the strokes healing symptoms.
Lady, she went to the hospital because she had little mini strokes. And the doctor said this, and that, and he probably just corroborated with her because, you know, these hospitals want money. When you're dealing with healing symptoms, you're gonna be doing stuff that that may be new because you've just addressed a future trigger.
Surprisingly, 2 other women came on the show to attest to how helpful jelly juice was in treating their chronic illnesses. They didn't get a chance to go in depth, so if anything, it was likely the other part of Jillian's protocol that helped them, which prescribes a general plan of clean eating. Also of note was that one of these 2 women was giving the juice to her children, although thankfully only in small quantities. Dr. Phil also enlisted the help of the YouTuber Jeff Holiday, who had researched and covered Jillian extensively to try and talk some sense into her, but it was to no avail. Jeff and Dr. Phil both pointed out that she was making her advice even more dangerous by encouraging people to go off their prescribed medications in conjunction with starting the Jelly Juice protocol. Holiday also commented on there being a cult-like aspect to what Jillian does, in that anyone who has doubts or questions is promptly kicked out of the community.
To the haters that attack me, you can either join us or you can go and live your controlled lifespan and be sick for the rest of your life.
After this stellar appearance, you wouldn't expect anyone to come within a 5-mile radius of this woman. But think again, business was still unfortunately booming for Jillian. The government can't properly prosecute her because she doesn't sell jelly juice, she just gives out the Krabby Patty secret formula for free. She does monetize her grift in other ways, such as by selling access to private forums and doing phone consultations. She also has a couple of books, which somehow don't help at all in illuminating the clear details of her ideology. Based on numbers she's given regarding how many people have paid for consultations and memberships for her site, some guess that she made $500,000 in 1 year alone. So even with how low level and utterly incoherent Jilly Juice is as a grift, Jillian herself is still absolutely milking it. To this day, she uploads winding rants of up to 2 hours on her YouTube channel daily, with titles like Magic Kinetic Energy, Music and Trauma-Based Mind Control, and Dr. Phil Strokes, which sounds like the most cursed NSFW video ever. She's revealed some interesting tidbits in her videos, such as that the Jilly Juice recipe calling for a tablespoon of salt was a typo, and that it was actually meant to be a teaspoon. Also, after all this time, she realized she could switch from pink salt to table salt because it's cheaper. She admits she just went with pink salt in the beginning because it was easier to market. As for what's happened to Jillian ever since going on Dr. Phil, recent developments include, but are not limited to, the allegation that she killed her dog. Yeah. This theory started when people took notice of multiple clips of Jillian discussing how her dog suffers from seizures, but that she refuses to take it to the vet. She also talked about how she was feeding it human food such as pizza, steak, and eggs, and that this must have been helping, otherwise it would have been much, much worse. Worst of all, the dog had a large lump on his belly, which people were speculating was a tumor, but she still wouldn't take it to the vet. This was all until February 2023 when it sadly passed away. Safe to say, you should keep your pets and any middle-aged women in your family as far away from Jillian as possible. The next story is that of 19-year-old Ramon Fry, who, unlike everyone else we've covered, came on Dr. Phil as a victim of insanity rather than its perpetrator. You see, Ramon married his high school sweetheart, Shailene, and had a son with her. He had to move in with his in-laws because he had trouble finding work, but witnessed them subjecting her to verbal abuse. Over time, Ramon became the target of scapegoating and endured derogatory name-calling. Faced with an unbearable situation, he realized that he needed to leave the household and his wife. As a result, a custody battle ensued. The times he was allowed to see his kids were nothing short of arduous, due to his in-laws trying to find any small infraction of his conditions they could use against him. According to Ramon, if I was wearing the wrong color of tie, they'd call the police. It was a lot more ridiculous than it needed to be. Although Ramon had already moved out of the house, an inexplicable incident occurred one day while he was visiting. His father-in-law, Lester Earl Reger, requested him to bring his son through the garage entrance when he returned him at noon that day. The reason given was that they were currently cleaning the carpets in the entryway of their house. Ramon agreed to the request and entered the garage. When he arrived, Earl Reger, who had his hand in a sling and an ice pack on it, met him there. Earl claimed that he had accidentally injured his hand with a hammer and asked him to retrieve some wood plugs that had fallen under a table in the garage, which was entirely covered in plastic wrap. While Ramon was crouching down to reach the wood pieces near the wall, he noticed that Earl approached him. Quote, "I knew something wasn't right, and I heard this pop. It was the loudest noise I've ever heard in my life." Earl suddenly aimed a gun at the back of his head and fired. Ramon miraculously got up and pushed Earl away. Earl fired a few more shots, one of which struck Ramon in the hip. Ramon managed to flee the house, reaching the highway where he flagged down a passerby for help. Ramon later realized that Earl had employed a specific mob method, using a .25 caliber weapon that would lodge a bullet in his skull without it exiting on the other end, preventing any evidence that a gun had been fired from reaching the rest of the garage. He also deliberately aimed for the base of the skull to sever his spinal cord, ensuring an instant fatality. Ramon only survived because the gun was off by an inch, with the bullet instead landing in one of the thickest places in the skull. Earl and his wife, Erlene, Ramon's mother-in-law, had prepared a hole to bury his body in advance, big enough to actually bury his car in it as well.
It's like the stuff you see in Hollywood, but it actually happened. They dug a big hole, actually big enough to bury the car. They thought about actually just throwing the whole vehicle in there.
As it turns out, Reger had a criminal history that helped explain how something like this could happen at his hands. He had done the same thing 25 years ago. At the time, Ramon was only aware of the version of the story he had been told, which is that Earl and his previous wife Simone got in a scuffle and she fell and hit her head on the sink, suffering a fatal head injury. Safe to say that wasn't even remotely close to the truth of what happened.
This was not she slipped and hit the sink. This man beat her into hamburger. There was so much bruising up and down all over her body and so much blood splatter in the house. They went, you know those little UV lights they go and try to scan the walls? They had a handprint from this woman that went down the front door where she was trying to...
So he beat his wife to death and he went to prison for it, served time, and wrapped her up, disposed of the body, got out of prison eventually, then shot you in the head, planned on wrapping you in plastic, burying you. Now he's in prison for that.
A news article about the trial further describes the particulars of this incident. Rieger pleaded guilty in 1985 to the beating death of his 27-year-old wife, Simone Rieger. Her body was found in the Snake River in August 1984. Rieger was convicted of first-degree manslaughter in a plea agreement with the district attorney's office. Rieger learned from that first incident and had prepared to get away with taking out Fry by covering the garage in plastic to hide evidence such as blood splattering in the shooting. He was caught on the first crime because his wife's body floated up. That's why he didn't use the river, why he prepared the scene. Prior to the trial regarding the attempt on Ramon's life, a dangerous incident took place in the dead of night. An unknown individual unscrewed the gas cap of Ramon's car, stuffed rags inside, and set them ablaze, seemingly with the intention of causing a vehicular explosion. The ensuing fire would have jeopardized not only the car, but also the house where Ramon was residing. Suspicion quickly fell upon someone with clear ties to Ramon's in-laws. During the trial, both Earl and Earlene were found guilty. Earl received a sentence of 130 months, while Earlene was sentenced to a mere 90. Both maintained their innocence during the trial, entering pleas of not guilty. Earlene's defense rested on the argument that the entire scheme had been Earl's idea. Earl, on the other hand, shifted the blame back onto Ramon, claiming that Ramon was the one who had confronted him with a gun, leading to a struggle where he disarmed Ramon and shot back in self-defense. Earl further alleged that he suspected Ramon of mistreating his own grandson, an accusation that was disproven during the trial. Notably, there were two additional individuals involved in this elaborate plan. Todd Mulvaney, acting as co-conspirator, had dug the grave and provided the gun for the crime. It was agreed upon that he would be paid $1,200 for his involvement. Another co-conspirator, John Fritz, testified against the others, providing information that was crucial to the prosecution. Ultimately, the evidence implicated a total of 4 individuals in this sinister plot to end Ramon's life. Ramon described experiencing symptoms of paranoia after all this took place, which is more than understandable all things considered, though it was foreboding of worse things to come.
Since the shooting, I don't want to call it paranoid, but I have experienced certain tics. I really don't like when people stand over me now. If someone stands behind me, I'm always looking over my shoulder. When I'm in a classroom, I always have to sit to the rear. I can't sit up in the front. I can't leave a drink unattended in a room because somebody's gonna poison it when I walk out. And I know it's not real, but it still kind of registers back there in the back of my mind.
The custody battle was still ongoing after the trial, and Ramon's appearance on Dr. Phil and its final outcome remains unknown. However, a subsequent update on the situation emerged after a couple of years. Tragically, he resorted to a disturbing act on his college campus. He doused himself in gasoline and set himself on fire. Against all odds, he managed to yet again survive through this horrific ordeal. The police had received prior information about Ramon's mental health challenges, but they didn't classify the incident as an attempt by Ramon to end his own life. It remained uncertain whether this action was a result of the effects of post-traumatic stress disorder. In a news article published a few weeks after the incident, it was reported that Ramon had made significant progress in his recovery. He was able to be taken off a ventilator, and his burns were gradually healing. Now, take this last bit with a grain of salt, but I was able to find one more link in Ramon's story, fast-forwarding all the way to 2021. There's a YouTube short by someone called Ramon Fry, and it does indeed look like an older version of him. The video is an application for the show Naked and Afraid, and in it, he unfortunately mentions he's been living with paranoid schizophrenia, but also that he's been dealing with it unmedicated. Severe trauma can contribute to the development of schizophrenia in those who are genetically prone, so this would make sense. As for Earl, he got back out of jail in March. This story is sad more than anything, and I hope Ramon can get what he needs, while praying that Earl is too old to cause any more damage to anyone else, though being 62 didn't stop him last time. Identity theft is an everyday occurrence as a result of scammers looking for a way to make a quick buck off an unsuspecting victim. However, what isn't an everyday occurrence is someone seriously stealing another person's identity without any clear financial incentive. Sure, there are a myriad of motives for doing so other than money, but they get progressively weirder. One such unorthodox manifestation of identity theft is digital kidnapping, where an unfamiliar person appropriates a minor's photo from the internet and presents them as their own child. They share these images on their social media accounts, deriving satisfaction from the attention and positive responses they receive for showing off their supposed kids. Sometimes specific hashtags are employed alongside these pictures to indicate to onlookers that the individual posting them is participating in role-playing and constructing a fictional world that is distinct from their real life. But sometimes they leave no indication that what they're doing is fantasy. Take the case of Ashley, who was featured on Dr. Phil in 2016 due to a family that, on the surface, she had seemingly no connection with. However, behind the scenes, her online presence was much more intertwined with theirs. You see, she was stealing pictures of this couple's children from Facebook and passing them off as her own, and she had been doing it for 4 years. April and Nathan had 2 twin daughters, Vivian and Sophie, who were 4 years old. But in Ashley's heads, their names were Adaya and Camberlyn. They were perfectly healthy, but Ashley's narrative was that one of them was suffering from epilepsy. Every single picture April posted, Ashley would repost on her own page with her own story.
She basically took my photos offline and made up a complete life of her as their mom and has a story to go along with every single picture was my girls.
When the girls were wearing shirts with their real names on them, she would blur them out. If their real mother April was visible in any reflections, she would blur that out as well. Ashley made a room with cribs which she painted the same color as the couple's own room. She went as far as framing pictures of the girls and scattering them all over her house. April and Nathan called the police on Ashley when they first discovered this, at which point they discovered that she had been previously arrested for burglary, assault, and computer fraud, and had spent time in jail for these offenses. However, the police said they couldn't do anything because, obviously, taking someone else's photos and re-uploading them isn't a crime. They tried asking her to stop before, but she didn't relent.
My husband sent her a message that we know that she has stolen photos of our babies. He's told her that we contacted the police.
We never heard a response. We thought that was the end of it.
Ashley's narrative included the caveat that she lost custody of the children and her mother-in-law had custody of them instead, an excuse she evidently made up so she wouldn't have to produce the children if anyone asked her to, but she made comments indicative that soon that might change, which was worrisome for the couple. When April, Nathan, and Ashley all finally met for the first time on the show, it was nothing short of enthralling. Ashley had started by vehemently denying the claims in the pre-interview, claiming she did indeed have her own daughters, which were the same age, but that she wasn't stealing photos and had never even seen April or Nathan before. Problem was, on the intake forum, she slipped up and claims to have no children of her own. It was astonishing that when she was first brought out by herself and Dr. Phil asked her about her pregnancy and details related to it, she had explanations for everything. She knew exactly how many weeks pregnant she was and even the birth weight of her daughters, but all of it was fabricated. She also inadvertently admitted she knew what she was doing was creepy by answering a hypothetical.
How do you think a mother would feel if somebody was hijacking their children and claiming them as their own and putting their names on them and all that? I mean, how would a mother feel if that was happening?
I think I'd definitely feel possibly scared.
Ashley surprisingly let Dr. Phil peruse her Facebook page live on the show to settle the matter, where he inevitably found hundreds of stolen photos. How she thought she was going to get away with it by just claiming she didn't know how all the pictures got on her page is beyond me.
Tell me who these girls are.
I don't know.
They're on your Facebook page. Tell me who these girls are.
My baby girls, Sophie and Vivi.
Apparently, she tried to clean up the crime scene before coming on, but she didn't have enough time to do it thoroughly.
And you deleted about 100 of them today.
I haven't been on my...
But you came to the stage before you could delete them all.
I haven't been deleting today.
Well, you've been deleting recently, but you didn't get them all deleted before you came to the stage today.
It's hilarious to watch her lie through her teeth, but what's even funnier is watching Dr. Phil furiously yell at her while catching her in 4K.
I have tracked your digital footprint all through the internet. You decided to sell this lamp, and behind that lamp is a picture of their 2 girls hanging in your house. This is a picture in your house, and this is a picture of you right here.
After the doc did some smooth talking to coax a confession out of her, she cracked.
I apologize for how I've made you guys feel. I really do.
She gave the excuse that she was doing this to have the experiences she missed out on by not having custody of her daughters, but she was obviously still lying because she had no children to speak of. The show even checked in with her mother-in-law, and she had never even taken care of any children on Ashley's behalf. Even the police were able to affirm that she wasn't pregnant at the time she claimed to have been. At the end of the day, Ashley agreed to stop stalking the couple and to receive professional help.
And you absolutely will leave these people alone. Take everything down off of the internet and accept the professional help that we're offering here.
Yes.
We don't know what happened in her story after this point, but from the outside it was evident she was looking for attention and sympathy by doing all of this. How far she actually took her own fantasies inside her own mind is anyone's guess. Out of all of the frauds in this video, perhaps none spun a more impressive web of lies than Sarah Delashmit. She would end up on Dr. Phil in 2019 after many years of lying to friends and family, defrauding any and every person or organization she could get herself entangled with. When her victims, who would appear on the show to confront her, started investigating her, they traced her fraudulence back to her losing her Oklahoma nursing license in 2014. This came about after she allegedly faked 2 separate pregnancies while working in a neonatal intensive care unit. The second time, she claimed to be pregnant with twins, and colleagues said she stuffed pillows under her shirt and showed them ultrasound pictures of the babies. When she inevitably never gave birth, she told them the twin fetuses died. She would end up having nursing licenses suspended in Virginia, Oklahoma, Missouri, and Illinois. From 2015 onward, she started making claims that she'd been diagnosed with muscular dystrophy and spinal muscular atrophy. Her motive behind these false assertions was to be eligible for a charitable camp named Camp Summit in Texas. This camp is specifically tailored for individuals with disabilities. Allegedly, she provided someone else's Social Security benefit statements as proof of her income when applying to the camp. By deceiving others about her medical condition, she managed to secure financial aid exceeding $2,500 to cover the costs associated with attending the camp. Bethany was the camp counselor who was charged with Sarah's care and considered her a friend. She explained to Dr. Phil how she helped Sarah with everything since she was supposedly wheelchair bound, and this went as far as having to change her feminine products. The ruse at the camp failed when Sarah's local pastor showed up to confront her. The pastor, in conjunction with Sarah's family, were well acquainted with her history of fabricating stories. When they saw she was involved with the camp and found out it was as an attendee rather than a staff, he came to confront her. When this happened, she just stood up out of her wheelchair and left. After her lies about having muscular disorders were exposed, Delashmit took to falsely presenting herself as suffering from stage 4 breast cancer between 2017 and 2018. On her Facebook page, she would post about all her fictitious doctor's visits to add credibility to her lies. This is when she befriended another woman named Liz, who also went on Dr. Phil to describe her experience. The problems began when Liz started noticing Sarah was copying her mannerisms, hobbies, and clothes as if she was obsessed with her. On top of this, Sarah would message Liz over 100 times a day, under the pretense that she was suffering incredible amounts of anxiety and pain due to her breast cancer. Liz hoped she could help out what she thought was a poor woman suffering from a horrible disease, so she obliged every whim. Arguably, Sarah's most crucial mistake was when she lied about having a husband named James, whom she even made a fake account for. She used this profile to interact with Liz's husband, Brian. As James, she guilt-tripped Brian by saying he was sad that Sarah was spending more time with the couple than with him. I don't know what she was hoping to get out of this, but this obviously caused them to temporarily pull back and not communicate with her, especially because they were on a vacation at the time. Sarah eventually couldn't handle the lack of interaction and manufactured a story about being stalked by a woman who was jealous of her fake husband, which culminated in this woman supposedly shooting up a store she was at, grazing her with a bullet, and injuring 7 others. She was messaging Liz all the while, texting her that the cops weren't showing up, her phone was almost dead, and that the woman had a gun, all in an effort to make Liz concerned about her. This egregious lie is what brought everything crashing down because there was nothing in the local news about any such shooting. What made it so insidious was that Liz had previously confided in Sarah that she had lost a friend to gun violence, so this lie capitalized on her previous trauma to pull her back in. Truly gruesome stuff. As part of her cancer story, Sarah took part in the Young Survival Coalition National Summit, where she dishonestly obtained significant donations in the form of free biking equipment. To further perpetuate her falsehood, she wore a survivor shirt during the event and positioned herself alongside actual cancer survivors. Delashmit managed to secure a travel grant to attend the summit and was even gifted an expensive road bike and cycling gear as a part of the Tour de Pink Survivor bike program. We'll come back to this later, because once financial fraud is involved, lying goes from a civil wrong to a crime. The full list of her lies to Brian, Liz, and Bethany alone are simply astounding. When Sarah went on Dr. Phil to supposedly come clean about everything, she started by portraying herself as some kind of victim, which is never a good sign.
I have a lying addiction. The last 8 years, I've done all kinds of extreme measures to make my life seem more exciting.
She implied she had done everything for attention rather than any kind of financial incentive, and started by saying her first big lie was faking cancer, when, keep in mind, she had faked pregnancies even before that. She also blamed what she did on an addiction, as if it wasn't her fault or she couldn't control it.
I didn't mean to hurt you guys the way that I did. Just such a compulsion that I couldn't control.
Sarah, it's way more than a compulsion. I mean, even just on that video, you're saying it's just an addiction to lying. This is way bigger and much more sick than just an addiction to lying.
I don't even believe a word you're saying.
Obviously, things could never be patched up between Sarah and her victims that easily, especially since she wasn't being forthcoming with the truth. She had such a large impact on her friends' lives, as well as stealing time and resources from those around her who were truly disabled. This was not a case of spilled milk.
You ruined our life. You took me away from my life, my family, my other friends, hours every day.
You've infiltrated a sacred circle, and you are worse than cancer. Do you hear me?
Better yet, when asked what wrongs she had committed or how exactly she hurt these people she had called her friends, she couldn't muster up even a shred of a satisfactory response, making her come across as a bona fide sociopath.
What have you done to her?
I mean, just lying to her and taking her away from her family and her friends and, the stuff that she, work and the stuff that's important to her life as well.
You see the problem? Here's the problem. It's because she doesn't know how to stand in your shoes because she doesn't have empathy. And that's why she said, well, I wasted her time. I wasted her time. That's why there's no genuine remorse here.
Some speculate she is one, considering how she accidentally smiled while describing her myriad of lies, as if she were taking pleasure in an accomplishment.
It took a lot of mental brain power to have to keep up the charade. If you're, playing, hockey and you want to hit the puck, you want to hold the stick and hit the puck, you can't do that. And you have this, you want to just grab the stick and do it yourself, but you have to refrain from doing it.
After her appearance on Dr. Phil in 2019, she would be charged with defrauding 2 nonprofit organizations and taking up spaces at the camp and summit that should have rightfully gone to genuinely disabled individuals. In 2020, she would plead guilty to the charges, as well as confessing to obtaining a $5,000 bike for free by buying it, then reporting the charge as fraudulent. In 2021, she was sentenced to 18 months in federal prison, and evidence presented at the hearing demonstrated that she had been conning unsuspecting individuals since 2006. She was released from prison in March 2022. 2022 would see an entire true crime podcast being made to cover her extensive history of lying, attempting to unravel her complicated motives in the process. The investigation covered other people she had lied to, which hadn't been touched on in the Dr. Phil episode, including telling people she was trapped in abusive relationships or that she was a mother who had lost her children. It's clear that she's suffering from a severe personality disorder or sociopathy, and whether she will ever truly get help or change her ways is unknown. I've been Turkey Tom, thanks for watching, and until next time, leave me alone.